All right, welcome back for the second part of our supplemental video on the first part of Beowulf. I have this list here again of what I think are the key passages and where sort of a way to navigate through this text. And we've already gone through the monster attacks. Just a couple more thoughts on the monster attack or some review questions. One, how is Grendel portrayed? When you read this fight, do you get a clear mental picture of Grendel and what he looks like? And if you do, how? What is it? What kind of imagery is used to describe Grendel? And remember that imagery, and technically speaking, doesn't just include visual sense data, but also sound, smell, texture. All these things belong to imagery. What is our overall? How is Grendel portrayed? What sort of mental image do you get? Going back to the last video, just to put a button on the question that we already discussed. What is the narrative point of view in this fight? Whose perspective is emphasized? Third, another one of the stylistic devices of the Beowulf poet, such as some of the ones we've already talked about, are alliteration, prolepsis or foreshadowing. What was the other big one? The appositive style, yes, and we'll come back to that. But another feature of Old English poetry is litotes, an ironic understatement in which an affirmative is expressed by the negative of its contrary. So one thing you can do to sharpen your close reading is find an example of litotes in lines 702 to 835. Now I want to talk just a little bit about the Finnsburgh fragment, which is on line 1070 to 1157. Why and how is this other story, this story within a story, dropped into the poem? What happens in this story? How do its themes resonate with Beowulf? And how does it resonate with its immediate context, that is, the situation of its telling and hearing? At this hall, at this feast, in Heorot, with Hrothgar and his clan, his family, present. Well, what is the deal with the fight at Finnsburgh? What does the story tell? It tells the story of a character named Hnaf. There's Hnaf, son of Hak, the half-Dane. And he's the lord of a Danish people who have conquered part of Jutland and exiled its former Jutish rulers. This act of violence, this act of conquest is lurking in the background. Finn, the king of Friesland, modern-day Friesland in the Netherlands, has allowed dispossessed Jutes, those who were kicked out by Hnaf, to settle in his lands and enter his service. Finn marries Hnaf's older sister, Hildeburg. Wait a second. So the guy who's accepting the dispossessed Jutes is marrying the sister of the guy who conquered those people and kicked them out. And then she sends her son, whose name was probably Frithowulf, for what it's worth, to be fostered in Hnaf's household. So this is the setup, right? Around the year 450 CE, and Tolkien argues that this was an actual history that was sort of woven into the fabric of the legend of Beowulf. So around 450, Hnaf, the conqueror, the son of the son of Hak Halfdane, sails to Friesland in the autumn. His purpose is to return Finn's now grown son and spend the winter in Finn's citadel, celebrating Yule, the pagan festival. Now, it was common for a son of an aristocratic family, of a noble family, to go and be fostered by a maternal uncle for a while to learn warrior stuff and whatever, and to cement family relations. But Hnaf, when he comes to re-get his son, brings a retinue with him. He brings an entourage. He brings a troop. 60 Thanes. He shows up with an armed band. And the foremost of these is Hengist, a Jute. Wait a second, I thought Hnaf conquered the Jutes and kicked them out. Well, the fact is that Hengist supported the conquering Danes, and therefore he is at blood feud with all the Frieses who were kicked out. This would explain why Hildebert had little cause to credit or to praise the fealty of the Jutes, since that fealty led to the reawakening of the feud which killed her brother, husband, and son. And one of the tensions in this little fragment of this poem is how there's been this bloodshed at the beginning of winter during the Yule holiday, and a bunch of them have been killed, and then they're forced to sit there because you can't sail in the winter. Things are frozen, the seas are too rough, and there's this sort of temporary truce before the end of the winter comes and everything is sort of worked out, or not worked out. The blood feud is completed, and Hildebert, the sister of Naf, loses everything. Now, again, I come back to these questions. Well, which questions? Why is this story dropped into Beowulf? What does it have to do with what's going on? Well, for one thing, we have a group of people from another nation who are in Heorot among the Danes as guests. They've sailed from across the sea, and they're staying alongside at the hall. So while that's going on, we hear this tale is being told of this terrible violation of hospitality, and that whole thing in Game of Thrones with the Walders and everything about the violation of the law, hospitality being like a crime against the gods, like being this terrible blasphemy. That's something that really comes out of medieval culture. So we have this sort of really kind of uncomfortably awkward topic going on during this visit. The other irony, the other resonance with the immediate context has to do with the presence of Wealhtheow. She is trying to put her son Hrothulf under Beowulf's protection at line 1179. But we know that Hrethric and Hrothmund are going to fall out with Hrothulf. That is, her uncles and her son are going to fall out, and there's going to be violence, and Heorot is going to be burned down, and this little group, this clan, is going to be destroyed. And this speaks to the role of women in Beowulf as so-called peaceweavers, or fragment. This is not a word that occurs in Beowulf itself. She's described later on in the poem as frithusib folka, as a peace pledge between nations. Folka, you can see the modern English folk there, at line 2017. Hildebert was this as well, as is, there's other references to two different queens, Hygd and Modthrith, at lines 1925 to 1961. And so this is one of the questions that we have to ask is just how effective is this custom? What is the cost of this custom? And what is it like to be a woman who has to negotiate these relationships and these tensions, to be sent to live with the people who have been enemies, and then to have children whose identities are intersected, are cut between these two enemy groups? This is one of the questions that Beowulf asks, and I would have you look at Beowulf's discussion of this particular custom for tomorrow's discussion at lines 2020 to 2031. And I think that's good enough for right now. Hopefully you'll have time to watch these to help set up our discussion for tomorrow. And have a great day. Bye.